All right, boys. Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 5 of The Crackdown. Today we have Revenge with us, one of my friends for a long time now. I mean, this guy's been playing in Challenger since he was like 14. Back when I was a pro player, that was the first time I ended up meeting him. Was originally one of the Riven One Tricks, kind of like Viper. He was good friends with Viper too. And now he is a pro player that actually had a pretty big breakout onto the scene recently. So man, like you got to tell me how have you been doing, and how do you feel about the team right now going into the next round robin?
Yeah, I mean that's it's quite an intro. The one of the Riven One tricks invite you to LCS, but
Yep, second Riven One trick in LCS. Third if you consider Broken Blade, but we'll give him a pass.
I mean we'll give him a pass. That's fine. No, but it's been good, man. I think it definitely was a bit of an interesting road to make it here, and like I think that like just starting the season with my teammates right now, the ones that I currently have, has been like just a complete like treat, because like I think like so far at least we have like probably one of the best team environments, at least on any team that I've been on, and from what I've heard from other teams as well, we all get along really well in and out of the game. And I think like we're sitting at a 4-5 record right now, so it's kind of like we're not too proud of like some of the losses we got, especially against some of the teams that we like really expected to beat. But like overall, I think it's like going better than I even expected before the season began. So
yeah. We should start with all the stuff you just implied there, Dom, about what your history of them is. I was going to say, like, when you told me who it was, I was like, are you really bringing someone on who's played 9 pro games in their entire life? But because if people don't know about him, that's not even a diss to him. Like, obviously, I've done plenty of shows with people who are like newer players. But the thing is, Dom usually actually is horny for the big names. He wants like huge names. So there's only 2 categories here. Well, this is the thing. This is my guess. Either you know the guy from the past, so there's more we can talk about, or it's like the Neon scenario. Maybe you like predict he's going to be a top player in the future or something. Is that the implication by having him on the episode, Dom?
Yeah, and then it's also just like I've talked to Revenge a lot before, and I know that this guy can talk for hours, so I know that it's going to be a banger episode either way. So I feel like that's something that I really focus on before. I think last year, I would I would just like message a lot of people that were like doing really well, and then you end up with like a lot of episodes where you're like, so what do you think about this team? And then it's like, oh well, I think they're pretty good, but we're also pretty good. It's like, all right, man, like just shut the fuck up. Right?
So this guy can talk. Yeah, gonna be good.
This guy can talk. This guy can talk for sure. But yeah, I mean, like we can start definitely in the beginnings of your career, because a lot of people don't know, but like in 2017, 2016, you were actually poised to become a pro player. I mean, you're already rank 1. I think in season 7 or something, you were rank 1, or maybe it was season 8. You were rank 1 by like 300 LP over the next person. So you're really up there in the ladder, and you're already actually getting scrims with LCS teams. Like it would look like it was going to be a transition. And yeah, you obviously made the famous choice to go back to school and pursue a medical career, Dr. Revenge, Surgeon Shen on the Rift. So, I mean, that was actually really surprising to a lot of people. I think that's been covered a decent amount, your original decision. The thing that was surprising to me was the fact that you actually came back to LCS, because every time I talked to you during that 2-year period, you were like, yeah, I got like a 2-month break. I'm playing some League again, but yeah, I just got to go back to school. And then you would like, you'd pretty much just ditch the game for like 6-7 months, come back, play 2-3 months, and ditch it for another 6 and 7 months. So I was so surprised that you actually made the decision to actually give LCS a full try. Like, how did you get to that state? Because you seemed so set on like finishing college, going to medical school, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, we can start with like what you first said. When I was 17, that was in season 7. Yeah, I was rank 1 for like 3 months straight, and I had like a 300 LP lead on rank 2. And at the same time, I got rank 3. So like I was like set to be, so I was rank 1 and 3 at the time. I was set to be like NA's like prodigy, going into pro play. And I think a lot of people don't really remember that, because I didn't end up going pro at that time, obviously. So it was like, for most people, it was kind of swept under the rug. But
were you a streamer? Did you just play SoloQ alone?
I started streaming when I hit rank 1. So I started my stream, and people began watching me because they're just like, well, who the hell is this guy? Who the hell is this guy, right? And I mean, at the time I didn't have the greatest PC, so I didn't stream too much as well. Like I just, the frame rate was terrible. So like when I streamed, I pretty much was just streaming on my Smurf account, which was then eventually rank 3. But like, I never streamed on my rank 1 account, so I didn't stream like my journey to rank 1. I just streamed.
By the way, he actually just low-key humble bragged that on a bad PC he got to rank 3. He was just fucking around with that one, you know, not even trying to. Like, that's actually low-key humble brag.
God, it wasn't a terrible PC. It wasn't a terrible. Like I could play the game. It's fine.
Okay.
It's bad
for
streaming.
Yes.
It's bad for like. If I turn my stream on, I'd go from 140 FPS to like 100. So it was like, you know, there's a trade-off, right? So, but I was actually set to join at the time. Funny enough, coincidentally, Immortals back then. They offered me a spot to basically play under Flame. So it'd be like a sub position. And Flame was, at the time, and I learned now, that he really wanted to work with a rookie and like coach a rookie up with him until he like retired. I didn't really know that back then, but that was like apparently what Flame wanted, according to people that I've talked to now. And at the time, Flame and I began doing 1v1s, like just custom 1v1s, and like basically he's just gauging my skill, and he just told the org that he really wanted me to join and that he wanted to work with me. So I was like, okay.
By the way, is that actually much of a thing, like for Western players? Because if people don't know, that's actually one of the things I know, especially like old school Korean League of Legends players was super into. Like top laners just play 1v1, like tons, like in-house, you know, because they're trying to test out like matchups or whatever. Is that actually a thing that Western pros do? I don't really hear about that very often.
I think it's a lot more common now. I mean, at least I do it. I know Licorice is really someone who does it a lot.
Right. Sure.
I mean, I do it with my academy top laner. It's a lot more common now, but I think like 4 years ago, it was definitely not common. I mean, I had never done it at that point as a SoloQ player, so it was really new to me. And I mean, I knew pretty much nothing about wave management and like essential things for pro play. So like, we would just go into these 1v1s and it was essentially like a mechanics check, at least for me.
Right.
And that was like what my path would have been if I did go pro back then. And the reason I didn't was for a couple of reasons. One of them being that my salary was going to be borderline minimum wage. So I don't even think it would have been minimum wage at the time. And I would have gotten
paid nothing back in those days.
Yeah,
like $2,000
and there was no health insurance coverage in teams back then as well, which is also something really important if I was leaving my house as well, especially for my parents, because I was, you know, still underage, I guess, right? And the second reason was then also because my parents were just really against me doing it, and the reason for that was because I had full rides for a few universities that I wanted to go to, and that was equating a lot more than a minimum wage salary at the time. So
yes,
it was a huge risk to take, because if I did want to do it for a year and it absolutely sucked and I got screwed over by an esports team, which is like, you know, pretty expected, I would have probably lost out on most of my scholarships. So I kind of had to make this like risk, and my parents weren't for it. I mean, they basically told me if I want to make that risk, you know, goodbye,
leave
go
the
do
house
it.
Or
but
whatever,
like,
yeah,
just to sleep, right? And I mean, that's like added stress to the situation that at the time, like, I mean, I'm just a 17-year-old kid leaving high school. Like, it was a lot of stress and pressure to deal with. And I've always been good at school. So like the easiest option for me at the time was to just pursue something else I also had a passion in, which was, you know, science and I guess, you know, my ultimate career, which is being a doctor, right? So and what people don't know is I went to school for pre-med and neuroscience. I actually was really, really interested in neuroscience, and that was what I did in
like 3 years, right? Like you were gonna.
Yeah, and that's like nearly unheard of. Like most people take 5 years to graduate with a neuroscience bachelor, at least in my university, and I was doing it. I could have done it in 2.5 years, but I was going to do it in 3 because that was when I would leave to apply for medical school at the same time. So like, I would apply for medical school and graduate with my bachelor's in neuroscience, and in 3 years. That was my goal.
Yeah. By the way, when you say that though, like I think people actually probably take that for granted, the story you gave. Like, first of all, the part that you said about your parents, I have to say, I've made this point many times. I know people in esports normally go the other way. I totally understand. I think it's actually completely reasonable if parents were like, I don't want you to go into a career in fucking video game professional play, as opposed to, listen, mate, you know, normally when people are like, oh yeah, like I had to give up school for games. Like, mate, some of those people would be serving me a fucking hot dog, and their question would be, "Do I want onions or mustard?" Like, they weren't going to be a fucking like investment bank or something. So for that guy, it's a way easier choice.
I'm right here, dude. I'm right here. Like,
just saying, but the difference is,
like, all right.
like, dude, especially considering doctor and lawyer are the go-to like dream jobs for the parent. It's not even like they were like, you could be a doctor. It's like, I'm literally also studying to be a doctor. Like, in that scenario, I totally get why your parents would be like, come on, man, fucking finish the degree. Especially because I remember back in the day, because obviously Voyboy had a similar story, right? Dom's old teammate from back in 2012. When Voyboy famously like, oh, I'm taking like a few years off medical school to be a pro player. I remember like Richard once said this. He was so right. It's like, mate, he's never going fucking back to medical school. He's just been a pro player for a few years and he knows he can stream. Is he going to go, nah, you know what? I think I'll just get up and do one of those fucking like 20-hour days where you study all day and then, you know, you've got years of that to go. And plus, think how many years, like you were saying, it takes ages. Like, if you give that up, you might never go back to that. Because who's going back 10 years later? You know, it's like some fucking bad Hollywood movie. You go back 10 years later and you're like, oh, what were you doing? I was a pro gamer. So the question is this: why in the end did you choose to go pro then? Because you've gone quite a long way through all the other stuff. Right? It's still a big gamble to do.
No, I agree, and my parents also agree with you in that regard.
Fair enough.
Like
Shout out.
I mean, you know, they think that they think that it'll be hard for me to want to go back. But I think that I'm a pretty specific individual when it comes to like wanting to actually do something for my whole life. Like, I mean, the way I see at least being a doctor or like entering these kind of fields is that it's not necessarily a job. It's like a lifestyle you're committing to, which is what you alluded to, right? Like you said that. Why would he want to go work these 20-hour days, et cetera, et cetera? Like this is something that you have to consider not work, but just a way of life, right? And if you can't do that, then you're not going to want to do it in the first place. And that's also why I chose to deviate from being a doctor so young, because all the experienced doctors and researchers and everyone I was talking to that was older and wise that I was working under told me, if you have something else that you want to do, you should go do it. Because once you commit to this lifestyle, if you aren't like 100% for it, you have like absolutely nothing else that you think you can be doing, then you're like, you know, then you should, you know, commit to it at such a young age. But if you have anything else to do, you should go do it. Because when shit gets hard, and it will get hard, like really hard, right? You're gonna wish you were doing something else sometimes. And if you have something else at that point that you might want to go do, then you might just go do it. And then it's really late, right? And then you've wasted money, and then you've wasted time. And then you're very unlikely to go back once you leave at that point. And then you're going through this like midlife crisis. And it's like really common. The reason these people all told me this is because it's like, this is something that happens to a lot of people that enter medical school at a young age. They realize, what the hell am I doing? Like,
of course,
this is like way too intense for me, and I'm way in over my head. Like I saw the TV shows of doctors, and I glorified this thing in my head. But why am I 24?
Yes.
And taking these medical exams, studying 24 hours a day? Do I even want to do this? And this crisis that you have at a young age is actually like, I mean, it could be devastating, and for some people they never recover. And for me, coming out and doing this has been like a life experience that I didn't realize how badly I needed. Like I think that even now, if I like completely shit the bed this year and no LCS team ever wanted to play with me again, if I went back to school now, I think I would be completely fine picking up where I left off, despite having been away from this like studying lifestyle and whatnot for a few years. But just because like I think that coming away from home, like going away from home and just being in this like environment where it's like I'm an adult and excuse me, I'm responsible for all of my actions. I think that it has been like really enlightening for me about like how I view life, and I think that alone is enough for me to go, like, it was worth it, and I just got to get back on track to whatever else I want to do, right?
As a person. So
yeah,
I mean, that's exactly what you said. There is the reason why my mom was actually supportive, because one thing that people don't really know about me is that my mom had true academic excellence, and she actually did exactly what you alluded to. So she got full ride to every single Ivy League school, including Yale, Harvard, Princeton, all those. And she actually ended up graduating from Yale, summa cum laude, went to Yale Law School. Like she did like the whole thing. And the reason why I make this point is because she actually decided when she had those scholarships that she wanted to pursue something else before she did it. So she actually did her little like detour, and she says that that was like really good for her in life to have accomplished something. So she was a professional ballerina for 4 years during that, and she's like, that's the experience that makes you grow, right? So she was actually on the opposite side, where she was like, pushed me to do esports when I was in college, because she's like, yeah, I mean, you can go back to school. I went back to school. Like, you know, it's always possible to be done, but you'll actually be so much more fulfilled by doing something that you're truly passionate about. Even if it doesn't work out, like the life experience that you're going to gain is actually going to be more valuable than whatever you would have gained in college during that time. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's actually just a great thing for a person to actually do something that they're super, super passionate about in that regard. I mean, one thing that I'm just thinking about when you're talking is like, at this point, you've been in, and obviously we can jump into the natural storyline, which is that you went to like academy and you had to grind up to LCS through that system for like a year and a half. But before that, I would just want to ask you, like, where's your mind at with completing school, like being a doctor? Do you like, what percentage chance do you think, or like, I mean, you don't have to give a percentage chance, but like, do you think that you'll actually pursue being a doctor or end up doing that later on in life? Or are you at the point where you're like, no, this is kind of like what my life is now?
Well, I think that right now I'm just taking it like a year at a time, in the sense that like I'm putting my 100% in League, and like being a competitor and trying to be like the best player possible and the best player that I can be, and then seeing what that leads me to, because like I think that my potential is there to be like really good and be this like and have the spotlight to become like a top pro player. And if I just keep working hard and that leads me to that path, then who knows what I will do after, right? But the idea of going back to school and being a doctor again, I guess that depends on the age I leave esports, and it depends on like the circumstances of my life at that time. Because I mean, it's going to be an insane commitment to go back to studying and trying to get into med school. And I wouldn't say it's impossible for me. It's just that I know that I'll have to be in the right headspace for it, and I don't know what headspace I'll leave esports with. So that's why I say I'm taking it a year at a time. Will I go back to school eventually? I think 100%. Regardless of the age I am, I think I will definitely go back to school eventually for something. What that is, I don't know. Potentially still to pursue being a doctor, yeah. But it depends on my age.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other question is like, how much would you be willing? Because I mean, the problem that a lot of people experience is like the hiccups that happen within a pro career. Like, how much would you be willing to experience like negatively before you'd call it quotes with esports? Like, let's say you play LCS for like 2-3 years. Would you be one of those people that like, if you at that point, you know, were forced down into academy or something happened with contracts, you weren't able to actually get an LCS position, would you still be battling it back? Or I mean, like, is it too far away to tell? Like, how could, because that's like the really tough thing that we see a lot of people deal with right now. You know, you see people like Hans or Cody's son, people that have had like long, stable careers now in academy, and then like they're trying to force to battle back. We even see people like Apollo like go down even to amateur. Like Zays was an amateur right now. These players were like, you know, considered pretty good in their roles not that long ago. Like, how are you one of these people that like you have the, you know, being a doctor, going back to school right on the back burner, where you're just like ready to jump to it at any point? Or is it kind of like the type of thing where you're trying to really like pursue esports to its max leg?
That's a pretty good question. I think I don't actually talk to many people about this that much and what I think about that, but I will say that I think that if I'm not capable of continuing LCS after this year, if my team, if Mortals and other teams don't view me as being a capable LCS player, I will just leave. And the reason for that is because I think that it would be for a few reasons. It's one, I just don't have what it takes then to be an LCS player, because I'm putting in like on my 100% to be an LCS player. And I think that so far I've been doing pretty well, but it's just like, yeah, and I hope to continue it. It's just, I think that if I spend this entire year improving, there's absolutely no way I won't stay in LCS. And if I don't stay in LCS because of, you know, while I'm improving, then I think there's something seriously, messed up going on, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I guess that's the issue, right? Is like that type of stuff
Yeah.
happens where you could be improving, you can be LCS caliber, and then because of like contracts, because like you might be in talks with one team, and then that team.
Look at all the EU players.
Yeah, exactly.
They were the ones that all happened to this off season,
Yeah, like people, like players that are definitely capable. It's like, oh, down the line, you're in really deep contract negotiations. You feel like the spot's guaranteed. Then last second to go with someone else. Now all these other spots have closed up because of like contracts. Like there's so many ways that you can get like fucked without it actually being like based on merit. So I mean, that's like that's I guess the underlying part of the question is like, how much are you willing to take like the abuse of the system? I guess.
I won't take any of it. I mean, if I'm screwed over by the system in that way, and I almost was last year, to some degree. But if I am screwed over in that way, I just think it's absolutely not worth my time in my life. In that sense, like I've already, at that point, I'd have, I think that every year of my life to me is seen as like super, super, super valuable. Like I would never take a gap year, for example. And there's nothing against it. I'm not saying gap years are useless and people shouldn't take them, or just like years of your life where you just need to like figure yourself out. I think that's fine. But for me, at least, I know that I don't need to waste my time. And I would just see being screwed over by esports at that point as a huge waste of my time. And whether I can make LCS again or not, I think at that point wouldn't matter to me. I think that I would just be valuing investing my time into something that I think is like stacking, like I'm stacking, I'm building up something, right? And I think right now, with there's potential for me to build myself up in LCS and to continue building myself up as like a player of the LCS, like when you think like these kind of players, when you think them and you think like there's no way these guys won't find a team, right? Like I want that to be
double this year, but we just
sure.
I mean, he probably could have been on a bad team, to be fair, but yeah.
To be fair, he
could have been on the worst team for sure. Come on.
Yeah.
Sure. Out of every team in the LCS, he could have been on some team if he wanted to, really, right? Like I refuse to believe that he couldn't, right? But and that's my case. I think that I want to be one of those players, and if I can't make it to that point, then and I'm getting screwed over by the system, then there's a few things. I mean, I could blame the system, but I could also blame myself because I haven't reached that goal of excellence that I set for myself for every team to want me, or for most teams to want me. And if it is just extremely unfortunate and some bizarrely unfortunate event where contracts, whatever, like you said, again, I still think at that point, then esports is just seriously messed up. Like, and I know it is.
You got the experience, so this is perfect, man. It's a perfect segue. It just leads right into the next topic, which is that like you didn't necessarily leave being a doctor for an LCS spot. Like the transition was not that easy. Like you were in. I think you're already like done with your second year, or you were like you were pretty much done with your second year, I believe, right, of college at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're 1 year away from graduating undergrad and going to medical school, and you left to join FlyQuest Academy at that time in summer. So you actually had to battle through Academy for like a year and a half, and I know that you experienced some of like the hard struggles of Academy. So like, what was that experience like? Because I mean, we don't really get to talk too much about Academy. Most people just say that it's generically bad. But like, how did you feel about just like the games you were playing? Did you feel like you were actually playing matches that were worth something? Did you feel like you were being scouted accurately? Like, how did that experience of being an Academy player like really match compared to like whatever your expectations were going in?
Yeah, so I had I think it was like 4 or 5 Academy offers, but I chose FlyQuest. And the reason for that was because I had
too, right?
There was Viper there, and there was Centauran and Turtle, and these are players that I knew since I was like really young, and I trusted them to be like good mentors for me, and they were. I think that Academy overall, at least like most teams, just has or had at least practically no infrastructure to develop players. And the reason and to me, we could define infrastructure, right? And to me, that's a staff that's at least 1 or 2 coaches that are really good at working with, teaching the game, a baseline understanding for pro play. And that's what Academy is, right? Or was at least. And 2, the capability for teams and their infrastructure with their coaches and analysts and whatnot to keep a healthy team environment. So, and to me, a healthy team environment is an environment where players are not, at each other's throats. Like there's a overall like good friendship between all of the players on the team. I know that sounds like really basic to some people, but you have to understand that that's actually just not the case for a lot of teams, even some of the top teams, right?
Of course.
Yeah, but I think that it's like extremely vital, especially in academy, because people are not playing perfectly in academy. The level of play is lower, and you have to be more patient with your teammates because, I mean, your opponents are also playing at a lower level too. Like, the whole point of academy is just to improve. You want to look like the best team, sure, but you're not going to. Not with your team. You're just not with your staff. You're absolutely not going to look like a top team in academy. It's just not a thing. So you need to have a team environment that's like going to last a year without you guys wanting to just like, FF the game at 15, right? And I think that stems from staff and infrastructure to control that too, right? And of course the players should take responsibility and just be good teammates, right? Like that's a given, but I think that's not always easy when there's so much like stress and competition involved, right? So mediation is really important. I think that at least in my academy experience, I didn't have that. So both, I just didn't have the infrastructure. So I didn't get taught the game at a rapid pace. I had to figure out a lot of things myself about how to play, everything when it comes to just pro play. My waves, my laning, my shifting, my macro, like everything I was so raw. I was just coming straight from SoloQ. So
I remember, man. I remember some of the games like you'd solo kill all these top laners, and then you just like have a bad wave state for a someday, and suddenly
and then I'm down like 20 CS.
Yeah.
I looked like complete garbage, at least for sure in my spring split of academy, and I think that's why a lot of people viewed me as this like terrible player coming into LCS this year. But like if you see it from my perspective, like I didn't know what to do. Like it's not like I've been coached and I'm playing like shit. It's like I didn't know what to do, and no one was telling me what to do. It was just like, oh, this guy's good at SoloQ.
Were there any like tools available to you? Like, did they have you watch like LCS scrims? Like, is there like somebody so like is that pretty much how you figured it out? Is like you had to watch like Viper play versus like like better top laners that were actually doing things and either learn from him or his opponents? Is that pretty much what you ended up doing?
Yes, yeah, pretty much. But it wasn't like the lessons were geared specifically for me, right? It was just kind of like watch and understand and learn.
That sounds.
And I'm like, all right.
I feel like I could.
All right, I get it.
Shit,
but I didn't get anything.
All right.
That sounds like a fucking Origin chalkboard. Old school reference.
Okay.
Actually, it's only about 4 years old, but yeah.
Yeah, true.
I mean, so like, and this isn't to like flame my old coaches and stuff, but like, at the time, I think that's just what coaching in NA was. And it like in most teams, I mean, that's just what coaching was. Like most of the teams were being coached by the players. It's just true. Like I think that I didn't realize how much I needed to know and how much I needed to learn until at least like my summer split. I mean, between splits of my spring to summer, I really began to realize I really began to understand certain fundamentals about my lane, certain fundamentals about the jungle. Because I like not only do I have to know my lane to be good, but I also have to know the fundamentals of jungle and pathing. And because like I can't rely on my jungler to do all of that perfect for me. I mean, I'm playing in academy. I don't have like a star jungler who's going to tell me like the jungler's pathing like this. Like I'm not playing with Blabber, like, and that's like.
Playing with Fnatic. Jesus.
No. I mean, no flame. Most academy junglers wouldn't do what someone like Blabber or Centauran could do. Like, they would just tell me how to play. Like they would tell me the enemy's jungle pathing. They would tell me to be careful top here. Like they babysit me, right? And I needed something like that with how raw I was, but I didn't have it. So I obviously looked really bad from that too. And then there was like a phase where I lost a lot of confidence because of that, because I think that like I was in this like state where I felt like I know I'm better than what I'm showing, but I can't show it because of the situation I'm in and because of what I've been going through, and I'm not learning at the pace that I wish I was. And that kind of led to me having this like phase in academy where I just felt like I had extremely low confidence, and I didn't know like how to fix it. It was the first time in my life actually that I was in this point where I was like,
it's like midway through summer, right?
Yeah. I was like,
I talked to you about it.
I was at this point in my life where I was like feeling like I'm failing at something, and like I didn't realize that I've never like really committed my life to something and failed at it at that point in my life. And that's not even to brag or anything. Like I don't think most people could. I mean, sure,
most people don't commit themselves to anything, so they can't even experience that. Like
yes,
in the first
yes, in the first place. That's what I'm trying to say, right? And so that's not to like brag or anything, but that was like my first. I mean, I'm young, I'm like 20 years old, right? Like it's my first real commitment outside of school to something, and I felt like I'm failing at it, and that was like hard to deal with. And of course, there was like some other stuff that I don't even want to talk about going on as well. I'm sure you might know, but that happened in summer as well. So
yeah, that was some interesting times, man. We're not gonna bring it up.
I'm not even gonna talk about it. But basically, my life was just. It just felt like my life was in a really shit spot. So like that, and I know people have it a lot worse. Like I'm not saying my life was shit. I just felt, to me, in my perspective, my life wasn't going the way I planned it to, right? And then the off season began, and I mean, I was straight up told. My spot's not secured. Like. We want to keep you. We might not keep you. I don't know. So I was
for
like,
FlyQuest going into like potentially joining the main team, or what was this like in regards
this was FlyQuest in regards to me staying in academy.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
So,
damn.
And I mean, they were like leaning towards still keeping me and whatnot. But like
does that imply they actually agreed with you? Like they saw flaws in your game, or they wondered, are you not developing in some way? Like why the coaches they weren't bigging you up?
I mean, they agreed that I've rapidly improved from spring to summer, but they were still like deciding, I guess, if they wanted to like continue committing to my improvement in academy and whatnot. And I was like,
I mean, there also has to be like underlying context there too, right? So like you're on FlyQuest. The other team were like they said that they were committing to Viper's improvement, and then when he started underperforming, they're like, all right, get the fuck out of here. We got Solo in here. Like, all right, now you get the fuck out of here. Like you're banished to Dignitas as an amateur. Like when that's like what you see happening to the main team's roster, it probably doesn't make you feel that good. Like under them, like you know what, I'm gonna get this fucking spot.
No, absolutely not. I mean that's no secret. I mean, when you see things like that happening in the main team, you're obviously like, this is going to affect me too. And it was affecting me. So I just went into the off season with the mentality that like, I need to just, if I want to keep playing pro, which I do, I know I haven't shown like a fraction of how good I am. I'm just going to grind. And my first goal is just to hit rank 1 right away. And I pretty much just played from, let's think. So from May, I played like at least 10 hours a day, most days 12 or 14. From May until
December, right?
Yeah, December. Yeah, basically. So, and I'm not exaggerating. I did not take it. I took from May to December, I took a total of, where I did not play League at all, 5 days off.
And that was like when you were traveling, right? That was when you.
And that was like 2 days I was traveling and 3 days I was in Texas with my family.
By the way, since you obviously in the context of this interview, like you'd already hit rank 1 years ago, that's when you talked about the Immortals offer. And then you say here when you were in academy, you're having all these issues, like you didn't even know the fundamentals of the game that you were learning from Flame playing the 1v1s, right? That's one thing I feel like you're in a prime position to talk on. Because one of my biggest pet peeves in League of Legends esports, people know one of the famous examples is that Malice guy that hangs around with LS. I hate it when SoloQ prodigies trash talk like what they think is like a bad LCS jungler, and they've never even really played like that level. Like they think, right, that their SoloQ play like translates, and they maybe even play the guy in SoloQ sometimes. I think that's also part of where the delusion goes. And they just think like, put me in there, I'd smash the game. It's like, mate, it's like obviously jungler's even more egregious because it's like it's probably the hardest role I think to skip up. But I'm sure for lanes it's the same. Like,
absolutely.
What are the differences? Like, if you were rank 1 and rank 3, in theory, in SoloQ, you maxed out. You've already done the most you can do in NA. So, what's the difference between being a rank 1 like SoloQ only player and even Academy trying to play like team oriented League of Legends? What would you say the big differences are?
Yeah, I mean, let me just say one thing about what you said about the delusion of like beating that player in SoloQ. Like, it's real. I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience. Like, I was once delusional, beating like someday in SoloQ in lane, and I'm like, oh, like, you know, it's not that good, you know, when I was younger, right? And it's like such a delusional like mindset that so many people have, especially junglers.
Yeah, it's true. No, I'm still delusional.
Junglers in SoloQ.
Bro, I'm gonna just say it. I took out Iconic yesterday. I'm like, shit, maybe put me in an LCS game right now and let's see what happens.
Because like, so then answer your question, that the biggest like struggle and just difference between SoloQ and pro play has to just be about how you're syncing your waves and your like timings of crashing and resetting and your tempo around not only your jungler but around what the enemy jungler wants to do to affect you. At least that's my experience in top lane, that it's like leaving the early game, right? Like, because after the early game, then it's like even a bigger story of how you play side laning as a team and how you play macro as a team. And notice I'm not saying individually, because what you're doing individually has to be structured around how your team is playing too. Like, these kind of things are so advanced and so different from SoloQ that it's literally like you're playing a completely different game. Like, the mechanics are there. The laning 1v1 mechanics are there. Like, if I'm playing Aurelia versus Kennen, for example, like that laning is just mechanic. Like, the 1v1 lane mechanics are there. But then there's all these extra small things that I'm doing, like when I'm crashing my wave, when I'm resetting, when I'm warding, when I'm when I'm going to take a trade, so then we can potentially do Rift Herald or something, right? Like, these things just aren't synced up at the critical times that you need to do it in pro play in SoloQ. Because in SoloQ, you could just do it whenever. You can take a gamble, you can take a flip. The game's not going to end. You're not losing like this big advantage that you've accumulated. But when you do in pro play, when you miss this 1 second window, when you go in on the wrong window and you throw your lead, you might have just lost the game in one play if you're versus a good team. Yeah. And that is like that. Just having that alone in your head while you're playing changes the way you play completely. It changes your aggression, changes your like, just like. I would say it hinders your mechanics a bit, because you're not just tunneling on your mechanics at that point. And if you are, you're not going to be thinking of the big picture, and you're going to make more mistakes. So when you lose sight of when you're not just tunneling on the 1v1 mechanics anymore, you play worse than you would in SoloQ, I would say.
Yeah.
So
sure.
That's what I would say is like the huge differences.
Yeah, I mean, then there's also like all the pressure and like everything that goes into it. Like that's one thing that people don't really understand. And then the other thing that I would say is like, when you play in SoloQ versus a lot of these players, people are more willing to play things they're not good at. But when you're playing against like Someday and fucking LCS, it's like you're getting a Renekton, you're getting an Aatrox, you're getting a Gragas, you're getting one of his like stable champions that he's not going to let you abuse you. Like, I'm sure that if you played like Fiora versus Camille or something against Impact, you'd beat him like 9 out of 10 times in SoloQ, right? But in competitive play, you just never get the Impact Camille. You're just always getting like that stable rock top laner where they're just going to they're going to just stonewall the lane phase and just beat you with like map play and shit like that. So that's why I feel like it's so difficult. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I said, you're just playing a different game. It's just.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't.
I even think that applies to the levels of the game. Like, I've often given this example in the past. Like, there's a classic trend which people have seen where a really good European player comes from LEC to LCS, and then everyone goes, he's going to stomp everyone. Oh, they're all shit, blah, blah. And half the time they're not even like top players. They're just okay players in LCS. Now, I don't believe that magically the second they crossed the Atlantic Ocean, they became trash. To me, it's almost like you are playing a different game, because like the meta is different in NA, like the way the teams conceive of the different roles is different. So it's the same in Academy. Like, an area I feel like, this is why to me Academy is so wasted, is because I don't think most of the teams even have thought, like, what am I reverse engineering this for? Like, what is Academy for? Like, is it, for example, to just find like the next talented player? Because if it is, by the way, probably the main thing you should do at the Academy level is just look for things like, are they reliable? Do they do what they're told? Like, do they have a good attitude? Probably nothing to do with their skill level, because in my opinion, the skill level, it's like a funhouse mirror compared to LCS. Like, some players players who aren't even good LCS players. Classic examples, we all know them, fucking Mash Me or fucking, I mean, I know he's your teammate, but I don't give a fuck, mate. Golden Glue. Like, these guys look like gods when they're in academy, but you put them in LCS, they're just an okay to below average player. Meanwhile, you have some players who are like, obviously, like, very good in LCS, and everyone says, yeah, they're running it down. I think some of them just don't know what the fuck to do when they play against academy level players. Like, there's the analogy I'd give very briefly. I once made a video on this because I think it's a concept that's very misunderstood. You know, when someone complains on Reddit and they're like, oh, like, I used to be in plat, but now I'm like in elo hell in gold because I get all these bad teams. It's like, no, you idiot. You know what? You actually might be a plat level player, but you're so stupid you're trying to play like you're in plat in fucking gold. That team is never going to follow up on that engage. That jungler doesn't know that your waves, like, none of the concepts exist. Like, you might be 10 kills up on a champion, but your team has no idea how to play around. So in that scenario, my analogy was, if you're the plat player, you actually now need to learn how to play in gold. It's a different game, mate. So to me, academy is very similar because I feel like going in, it's also tough as a player, right? Like, what is my expectation? Am I supposed to smurf here? Because maybe that won't even get me in LCS because no one respects academy. Am I supposed to just be the nice guy and show, you know, I play well with others? Like, I often wonder what people expect. I think it's like a minefield to me.
Yeah, it's actually crazy. Yeah. I mean, that kind of leads into also like scouting and things like that. Like, how worthwhile did you feel like your time was spent in academy? Because a lot of times we're seeing like it feels very hard to actually move up. And then you see, even like, if I was an academy player, I would be so pissed off. Like, I think that Nile is iconic. I think that they're actually like pretty good, but I'd be so pissed off seeing like people from collegiate just skip, like, they didn't play in amateur or then academy. Like, they didn't follow like the right trajectory, you know, like, it's supposed to be a feeding system where everything just goes into LCS. You know, you play amateur,
you work your way up.
Yeah. You play amateur, collegiate, whatever. Then you go into academy, and then academy is like your training grounds. And then once you do well in academy, then you get into LCS. But it just doesn't even feel like that really happens with our league, you know, like, randomly. I mean, you'll have players that are just like stuck in academy for like 5-6 years, and no one really knows how good they are, like, and no one actually feels like they watch it enough.
Or why they keep them around. Like, that's the one I always wondered about. Like, some of the washed up pros who are clearly never going to be LCS again. I sometimes wonder, like, why do they still have them in the team? Like, is it, for example, do they need a veteran in the academy? I don't know what the fucking logic is, but some of them, like, I just think, mate, he's not coming back after 5 years. It's not just going to come back like, oh, I'm back, guys. Like, what sort of mad comeback would that be? It's not happening, is it?
I mean, who knows, man? Maybe we might see a Zion Spartan make a return over Fudge and C9 if Fudge keeps running.
Mate, at this point in time, Darshan, if you're listening, just rebrand back to Zion Spartan, mate. If you could make us forget the Darshan period in the last few years, you might have a chance. Get your fucking teacher on the phone. Is she even alive still? Who fuck knows? But anyways, call her up. Ask her if she wants to be in a video. Yeah. Tell her to call you again. Maybe she can even do like a ceremony. She can knight you like, arise, Zion Spartan, non-feeder of the top lane.
Oh my god, man.
Can't do anything.
I mean, okay, so like, I think that, like, so at least academy for me felt really awkward with what you were talking about, with like how I felt like I was being scouted and whether or not I'm like good or bad. Like, how do you tell, right? Like, I think that there's like there's like a few things I would say, at least for top laners, is just like, okay, if you're dying 1v1 in lane, if you're like going down like CS every single matchup of every single lane, then like you're doing something wrong, right? Like, you're just bad. And I think that stems from like a lot of small things, and that you should work on those things, right? And I think there's like certain fundamentals that can show, like, at least in comms and in scrim VODs and stuff, that I think good scouts would look at. I know that the way I was scouted by my head coach and assistant coach, on Immortals, they looked at they watched my stream, actually. I streamed.
No, but that's what I'm wondering.
Well,
like,
13 hours a day.
Well,
some days.
Yeah, just before you finish this point, I don't mean to like cut you off, but I just wanted to ask this. How much did you feel like they scouted you based on like your solo queue performance compared to like what you actually did in academy? Like, that's like what I kind of wanted to just interject before you finish the point.
Well, I talked to them about it, and they told me they watched some of my academy games, and then obviously they looked at how I was playing solo queue, because like I was rank 1. I even hit like top 10 on another account at some point at the same time. So like I was going on the solo queue smurf grind, and they thought, okay, like, let's watch how this guy's playing, right? And they were aware that I hadn't received like adequate coaching up until this point. So they knew like I'm just a raw player.
Yeah, I mean, Guiona
And-
just typed in my chat. Honestly, it was just a complete burger flip. So, I mean,
Well,
I don't know. I mean, that's your
there
coach
it is.
right there, dude. Like,
I mean,
And he had Destiny on his fucking team, so man alive. Calm down, Kyoto. Fucking hell, mate.
Jesus Christ, Guiona loves flipping it. Holy shit. I mean, after Origin, you know, I think at that point you just gotta fucking flip it. Like,
That's true.
I mean, the thing is like he knew like I don't know how to play the game. Like, well, okay. he knows I have mechanics and I could win lane against most players. I could win lane against almost anyone. I just like the way I'm playing the game needs work. Right? Like we'll just say that, right? I don't want to shit on myself too hard, but he sensed that, so he went for me over like some of the other top lane prospects, if you want to call them, like Darshan, right? And I don't mean to say that as flame. It's just funny. But
yeah.
I mean like because people on Reddit were just like, you know, they're pitchforking when I got announced, right? Like they were saying like, why are you guys giving Revenge, this rookie who hasn't played who's played 1 year in academy, they have no idea about my history. Why is he getting a chance in LCS and not Darshan, who's been smurfing academy? And it's like, I don't know, you know, like I mean, like what do orgs want from their top laner, right? Like that's the question, right? Like what is this player's peak? Is this player showing he has a bigger peak than he has? Like these are the questions scouts ask, right? And I don't know, right? Like it depends on the scout. Like some teams, like you said, in academy want a veteran on their team, and that's why they want to keep them, because this veteran, you know, you might not think that they have a higher skill ceiling, but they're playing consistently. Like they're playing at this consistent baseline level that you need that team to let like the other rookies flourish, right? Or function, and that's okay.
I mean, I think one of the things also about like the team that you're on right now is like how it was scouted and how much better the Immortals roster this year was scouted than last year, right? Because last year it feels like you have a bunch of players, and no, like I'm not gonna like shit on them too. Like obviously things went bad. My point is like you have players that are in different categories, right? You have like stable players that are gonna do like the right thing most of the time, and then you have like firepower from other areas to try to
It's good balance, basically, right?
Yeah, you balance the team where you have like places where you have like, you know, volatility, and then you also have stability elsewhere, so that you have like abilities to beat really good teams. I felt like last year with the Immortals lineup, and you know, obviously like it was completely different people that scouted it and everything, was a bunch of role players where you couldn't see them getting any advantages anywhere, you know. But I feel like at least this year there's a good mix and match, you know, like you're the guy with the mechanics, you're the guy that has the potential to like solo kill Alfari and stuff, and then you have like XerXes, who's gonna be stable. You know, XerXes hasn't been like, he's not a pop-off jungler, he's not gonna be like Blabber where he's just gonna have like a million kills in a game, most likely.
Just wait.
He's just EUX Smithy, mate. He's EUX Smithy.
Yeah.
That's who fucking is.
Yeah, exactly. But imagine like, so they put EUX Smithy, right? Or they put the real X Smithy with SOAS last year. Like, how is that going to work out? You literally have the same player twice. Like the reason why like the old Fnatic lineup worked in 2018 was because you had like the caps being balanced by the SOAS. You know, you have this ability top lane, the person that can like pick bad matchups and like go even and just be relevant every game, with the person that needs a lot of fucking attention, because at that point Caps was not a stable laner. He was somebody who was just like, you know, random. Like, I mean, that's why the whole Caps, the Claps versus Craps meme started, was because he would just randomly int like half of his games. So I think that actually makes sense with your lineup. It's probably the reason why you guys are seeing more success this year.
Yeah, and I mean, I think our coaches took that into account as well. I think they did like a pretty good job in scouting, and they just, I mean, I just get the sense that I trust our coaching staff and just staff in general this year a lot more than I, you know, would have even expected to, just like with my first experience in esports. So like, I think that's been really reassuring to me, to just like focus on my gameplay and like just perform the best that I can. Like I don't have to worry about all this external shit. I just need to like do me and just be good and focus on, you know, not
be a good LCS
like,
player. You know, like,
yeah, just not like, and just learning how to compete. Like that's just a big thing too. Like competing in LCS is way different than competing in academy. It's like the stress on game day is like 50 times higher, and like the consequences are much more, and just much more severe. So like I think to me that's why I'm focused on the most.
Do you feel like there's one step left? Because like obviously like you're already feeling the stress. So, like, do you still wonder like what it's gonna be like when LCS eventually goes back on stage, because I feel like that's a huge thing that you haven't got to really experience yet. Like LCS
Have you
on
ever
stage
played a
every
LAN?
weekend.
Have you ever actually had any LANs in your career?
No. Well, I played on stage in Academy actually for a bit in Spring Split. So that was like my only experience really.
Yeah, it was like when they put it like after the LCS game on like a Sunday or something.
Right.
Yeah. I played a bit in Spring Split and I think a bit in Summer Split too. I mean, I actually prefer playing on stage. I think that. I mean, it's kind of hard to say if I prefer it or not now that I'm in LCS, because I think it's way
you haven't
different.
got to do it like, you haven't got to experience like the hyper pressure that comes with like being in LCS as well, where everyone's gonna like,
I mean, there's actually people there in the crowd, and I don't know. I mean, it's definitely something I've thought about a few times. Like, I'm more excited for it than I am nervous for it, at least, which is good. But I know that it's something that I'll have to deal with when the time comes, I guess. So like, we'll just see what happens. Like, I hope it can happen sooner than later. I think it's like part of the experience of being a pro, and I'm missing out on it greatly right now. So that makes me a bit sad. But it's like, when it does happen, I mean, I think I work decently well under pressure. Like, I honestly think the TL game that we had, the first game of the split, like, that game was like, and the reason I was like so happy when we
did it hit different when it went live, that game?
The pressure was insane. Just because like it was the first game of the split.
You're against TL.
Like it's my debut against on LCS. I mean, I don't even count lock-in like that. That was, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's against TL. They just won lock-in. Like, I think that was probably like the most pressure and stress I had going into a game. And I mean, I felt like I managed it pretty well. So, and just overall, I think that that's what I'm working on now, is just managing my stress, managing my like routine of competing, because like you said, when I go to stage, it's going to be even more. And if I'm not prepared, like,
yeah, and it's just different, like you playing, that's like one thing that Thor always brings up, but it's actually so true, is like a lot of people don't know how to play on a different computer with different settings, and everything doesn't feel, it's very hard to get LCS to feel perfect, like your home environment. Like I would, when I played LCS, I would go down to like specifics. Like I would measure my chair to my desk to make sure that I was at the same exact spot. We had the same chairs. I would measure like the monitor length and everything, and it never still feels quite right. It's close, but it's like that uncanny valley type feeling where something is slightly off and you can't tell what it
makes
it
worse that it's a tiny bit off, right? As
and
opposed to if it was a load off, you'd know exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. I mean, I know a lot of my viewers don't know what that shit is, so I'm happy that
that's a good analogy. Just Google it.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the type of thing that people used to like have to experience. I think that was something that you even see people struggle with when it comes to even Worlds, right? Because even at LCS, you can kind of get into the same mindset of LCS. Like, they save your profile or whatever on the computer, so you have like the same sensitivity or whatever whenever you log in, and it starts to feel more comfortable. Like, even though it's still different than your home setup, it's at least consistent. It's when you start going to like all these like different tournaments you have to play at all these different places, that's when you start feeling like, what the fuck is this? Okay, this computer's different. Oh, like I mean, obviously it's better now, because like back in my day, you play on fucking some that were like 60 hertz, 144 hertz. Like, you didn't know what the fuck monitor you're on, some boomer shit. But like, it's still not going to feel quite right. So I mean, I guess that's like the part that you have to just like, it's hard to have the same level of mechanical confidence when your setup doesn't feel right. That's like what I would say.
I mean, thankfully for me, I've always been a player that not.
Yeah, you're trained at 100 FPS,
I don't know. Like, I mean, okay, like my origins of playing was on a laptop. Like, I played on a laptop until until season 7. Like, I was a laptop gamer. So like, I feel like I'm really adaptable. Like, even my DPI. Like, if I changed my DPI, I could probably adjust in like a few hours. Like, I don't know how or why. I just like things like that don't bother me that much. Like my distance, like. The way I sit, like all this stuff, like I can change it every single day, and I feel like it wouldn't.
What DPI do you play on? You play on like 1800 or something like that?
No, like just like 1500.
Oh, 1500.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's never been a problem for me, like specificity. I know like some of my teammates have like very specific things they don't like. Like Xerxes, for example, doesn't like borders on his monitor. Like, he doesn't like just like something so small like that. It's like. I mean, I know even
you must be really left wing.
Okay, come on, man.
That's like the
Jesus
most
Christ.
extreme I've ever heard. You know. Keep going. Keep going. Let's reel it back.
God damn it.
I think like
It's a
last
dumb
year when I
fucking
was
joke.
on FlyQuest, I know Solo has like Solo's always been a player who has like extremely specific like
Okay.
yeah, and Centauran as well. Like Centauran doesn't like his mouse pad like crinkled even a little bit. Like he will, he won't play on it if it is like. There's like these really small things that I'm just like.
Oh yeah, we had
Wow.
Gilius come on. Gilius told us a story about the cord, where they were like he only plays with a wireless mouse because if the cord is like in a different position,
Yes,
it would feel so foreign to him that he couldn't actually play the game. So like. He tells everyone on his team, make sure you have a wireless mouse. Like, don't go on stage with a wired mouse because the way that they loop your cord like through like the whatever like thing to get to the the USB ports at LCS, he just didn't fuck with it. So I mean, people are really specific on that shit. Just to give an example,
I'll give you the silver lining though, mate. Here's the thing, right? Because obviously everything's about how you frame whatever's happening to you, whether it's good or bad. So even though I agree, listen, if you say like, oh, finally an LCS. Oh, by the way, it's the year where it's all fucking online and there's no LAN. Like, yeah, that sounds like it sucks, doesn't it? Like, what the hell? I got here finally and it's not even real. But here's what you have to do. You have to frame it this way. This could actually be a massive positive for you because you can now compete for at least one split against some of the best players in LCS who have the opposite problem, mate. Like, you're actually like halfway now between going from Academy to like real LCS. They're having to take the step back. And I can tell you coming from Counter-Strike where we used to have LANs like every 2 weeks, dude, it's really hard for the guy who's like the best LAN player to go online and know like this environment isn't like quite how it would be in the real game, but take it as seriously. So I can imagine, by the way, you look at some of the vets like Impact, some of these names that we've mentioned before. I don't know if they feel the same when they played in a world championship as they do an online LCS go. So this is actually a time where you have a chance to really show your skills off in almost like a more even ground in a sense. Like their experience doesn't matter as much, I don't think.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I've definitely thought about that too, and I think like especially for players like Impact and Someday and like these, and even like Alfari, who I believe has been to Worlds.
Yeah, he did.
I mean,
once.
So
it's first season.
All these players that have been to Worlds, like I already know that like they have a huge they're going to have a huge upper hand when stage comes, right? Just because they have played there before, and that's like their natural environment, like you said, and. I mean, I'm just curious to see how I do on stage before I like say if it's like a positive or negative. I think that like there's a chance that I can do good and even better on stage just because like that pressure hits me and I can do well under that pressure. I believe.
And then it's like the whole team thing though too.
Yeah, and okay, that's the other thing too is like your whole team now. Like, what about my teammates? What about
Some people are quiet on stage. Like they just don't want to talk as much. Like we had that problem all the time. So
yeah. So it's definitely, I mean, I can't wait, to be honest. I can't wait to just see how it is and finally put myself in that playing ground. I think it is positive though, like for me, like you said, to like have that showing already now against these top players with somewhat of like a handicap, if you want to call it, right? And that's, that's good. I think that it's been good for me, and I'm glad that I can already deal with the pressure I'm feeling now before it's like kind of getting thrown in the deep end, like, hey, feel like the stage pressure and the debut in LCS and all of that. And I think that that's good for me. So,
by the way, whereabouts in the US did you live before you were in Academy?
Man, this guy, let me just tell you, dude, this guy had the biggest advantage possible. He lived in
Was he in Chicago?
Yeah, he was pretty much in Chicago on 19 ping or something. Like
that must make it hard though when you come to now though, right? You're on like the 60 ping or whatever.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I was playing in Challenger when I was on 60 ping as well, because I was in Challenger before the server move, but I mean, the server moves definitely helped. Like, I was playing mechanical champs like Riven, Aurelia, and Fiora and all of this shit, so like, I mean, of course I'm going to have this insane advantage. I was playing on 70 ping actually, so like, I went from 70 ping to like 14, so yeah, it was pretty massive. It took me a bit to adjust because like, yeah, the ping changed, but like I was still playing like I was on 70 ping because like I played for like I wasn't actually abusing it as much as I could, but then I began getting better and better like rapidly, and I was like, oh, whoa, like the ping actually matters, right? And going from off season, so in off season I go home, right, and I play on SoloQ on low ping, to like coming back out here for like 2 days, I feel like I'm lagging. And it is just horrendous to think that like this is a solo queue I have to be playing in for like the rest of the year. I mean, you know, we can do in-houses and stuff. We can work around it. It's not like it's impossible to, but like,
it's hard to do the in-houses, man.
Man, like, we just want to play solo queue. Like, every region just wants to play solo queue. No, like, we can do like in-houses with no comms, but it's like, I mean, for me, I'm a huge fan of playing solo queue, climbing the ladder, having a ladder to play, even playing with like random players, right? Like, shit, I want to test this new champ and this new matchup. Do I want to be playing against someday? No, like, you know, sometimes I want to just be playing like or work on these new champions at even like I don't want to say like a lower skill level, but like just with less pressure and with less like stress about it, right? Like, I think that stress and pressure is made up. Like, it is in my head, but it's there, you know, and it's in every. I think it's in every pro player's head. Like, even in solo queue, when you load up against,
period.
Yeah, when you load up against another pro player, like, I mean, at least for me, I feel like I try harder. Like, I don't want to get shit on by like when I'm playing against Impact and solo queue, I don't want to go 0-10 in lane. Like, that's just embarrassing. Like,
yep.
If I'm playing against some random solo queue player and I have a 3-wave stack on him and he's like half HP and I'm full HP, will I just try to 100 to 0 dive him for mechanics check? Sometimes, you know. If it's someday, would I do it? No, probably not. I'd want to keep the practice like more consistent, because like limit testing in solo queue is important. It is. I think it's extremely important for mechanics. I think it's extremely important for like, you know, pushing yourself and being more comfortable pushing yourself on stage and whatnot. But solo queue is good for that kind of stuff, and it's needed. And low ping really helps with that too. So
yeah, I mean, and it's also just like you can get way more repetitions in, because people like, we were doing in-houses in the off season. I was like cast them. I was even trying to like help put them together. But like the amount of time that goes into like trying to get all the players.
Doesn't it take like an hour to set the fucking game up or something?
Oh
ridiculous?
yeah,
I've heard some terrible stories.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, we even would set it up for like, so we would do like one best of 5, and it would start at 7 p.m. PST. So like you would, so number one, it'd be hard for people that were like in Central and the East Coast, because I think Revenge was actually like you were in Chicago during when everyone was in housing, right? So you have to set the schedule for like pretty late at night. Not everyone could participate, but then it's just like getting everyone there. And even if you were doing like consistent in houses, you're only getting maybe one game every hour, like average, something like that. Where in solo queue, you can just queue up, and if you're playing it like peak times in solo queue, you can just get game after game after game. So like it depends on really what you're practicing for. Like, I think that in off season in house has more value because there's no scrims, so you can play like solo queue all day, and then you can do like the in-houses that kind of take like the replacement for scrims, where you're still communicating and you're still like playing in a team environment. But I feel like when you're already scrimming all day, like doing in-houses after it, I think it just feels like overkill, and it's almost like you're not able to actually ever like solo practice. It feels like you're kind of just like forced to always be like really try-harding, playing like good champs, because you don't want to like run it down in an in-house with like a bunch of pro players. Like, it's just,
it's embarrassing. I mean, it's like, and no pro player will tell you that they haven't ran it down in solo queue simply because like they just had a long scrim day and they are tired and they're just queuing up for solo queue because they have nothing to do and they want to keep grinding, right? Like, if you go in to some of those solo queue games, like, you're gonna witness underperforming pro players. It's normal. To like put that pro player in like an in-house after scrims, like I think that's when it becomes kind of dicey, like, because like you don't want to be in that headspace and that like that level of play around your opponents and your, you know, just people that you're actually going to be competing against. It even though it can happen in solo queue, I just feel like it's not as you know.
I mean, also it's like when you're in housing, man, like if you're in housing, then like you don't want to like, if I'm playing with players that I'm going to compete against, I don't want to play. I don't want them to know exactly how I think about the game all the time. Like, I feel like that's just not, like, you lose a competitive advantage there. I mean, it's part of the reason why when I was a pro player, I almost never streamed, because I just didn't like, if you feel like you're better than other people, why would you want them to be able to like see everything that makes you a good player? Why do they need to know like how you're going to play around waves? Like, if they know like how you like to stack waves, like when you like to dive, like all that stuff, like, is that going to really benefit you when they're playing on the opposite side? It's like, oh, I see like him starting to stack the wave. Oh, I know it's coming. Like,
I mean, I've heard that a lot from other pro players too. Like, they don't like to stream during the off season or during the season because of that reason. And I think that it's not as like important as they may think, because I think that like, yes, you can learn how this player approaches a matchup, and that's very useful. But at the same time, like when it comes down to it, like you still have to play properly as the opponent, right? To like counter it or to do it right. Like, yes, you can gain the knowledge, but like I don't think it's as huge of an advantage as you might think, because if you're actually that good, you're gonna outlane your opponent, right? Like you're gonna do the small things better than them anyways. Regardless of whether they know you can do it or not, you're still gonna do it. And that's how I feel, at least when I like for example, when Alfari turns on the stream or sometimes I tune in and see his VOD and watch him, and I'm like, it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm gonna shit on Alfari now in this matchup, like for sure, right? It's just like, I can see his base level,
Put it this way,
performance
people on these shows have said that when ProView was available, you could pick up mad little details, about how someone lanes or where they're going to click or where they seem like they're looking. Like, there's definitely shit you can pick up that isn't just, from the normal VOD or whatever. By the way, Dom, you know what? It's gone on long enough. Ha. It was really funny. But actually, Dom, I think it's really fucking immature. Because you couldn't get a guest, you got fucking Nisky to come on, put an American accent, and put this fake background up. As if there's a real player that looks like that who plays in the LCS. I don't think so, mate. So, has anyone ever seen the two of them in a room before? I don't think so.
I haven't.
That's really funny.
Suddenly, Riot invents this whole Corona thing, so that now, like, they
convenient, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, and then the real Nisky went home, did he? To Fnatic. Bullshit. I know. Come on.
Actually, Xerxes used to be on a team with Nisky, and he like out of nowhere will just look at me and go, "Oh my god, you're like so much like."
It's uncanny. So yeah. The glasses do make it more ridiculous though, because he has like the same type of glasses too as well.
Yeah, I mean, I usually wear these just when I play. They're like they have like a tint to them as well, but it's like,
sure.
No, I've met Nisky in person before.
Oh, fair enough.
Actually, yeah, we're I guess we're like friends. We're not like super close or anything, but we're like when he was in NA, we'd play a lot together and stuff. So,
I mean, you spent enough time in the womb together, so fuck
yeah.
After this, yeah, why
not? So like we've exchanged.
There you go.
We've both played any SoloQ, we've been through it.
So Nisky's like one of my friends, is on the co-streams all the time, and one way that I always flame him is I always compare him to Waluigi, like if you take a picture of Nisky, you take a picture of Waluigi, they look similar. I would say that Nisky looks more like Waluigi than Revenge does, though. So there's a little bit of a differentiation there. Like, I don't know.
The scale of the intensity of Waluigi is like...
Yeah, it's not completely there. So one thing that you were talking about was SoloQ, and how like you see like some players that aren't completely like performing or like as tryhard. Where do you come down on like pro players not being in Challenger and stuff like that? Because like we see a lot of pro players this year like under 50% win rate or like hovering 50% win rate, like masters, low masters, like stuff like that. Does that affect you? Like, does that affect your perception? Like if you saw one of your teammates playing like that in SoloQ, like low masters, 50% win rate, doesn't look like a real pro account or anything, like how do you feel about like that type of stuff? Do you think that every player should be like Challenger at the minimum, or how do you come down on that idea of practice outside?
Well, I mean, SoloQ as a pro, like your rank in SoloQ, especially during the early season, like and now, should just be a matter of how much you're grinding. Like if you grind, you're gonna get high rating, in my opinion. Especially right now with the Riot accounts and the plus 30, might but like so like I'm pretty happy at least with my teammates, right? Like 4 of us are top 20 right now, I believe, or like top 25. So we all grind.
So who's the one that's not, man? Is it Xerxes, man? Just
I think it's Raze, but he's up there. He's like close,
Oh shit, nice.
So it's not like I think Insanity's top 10. I think Xerxes is like right under him, and then I'm like right below him, or maybe it's the other way around now. But we're all like between, like we're all like 900 plus LP, I believe, and it's good because I know that we're all just grinding. I mean, that's all we do. We scrim and then we like go home, and I just see all my teammates in queue, and it's like, like that's what I've always wanted, even since I've been in academy, is just having teammates that grind. And I think that if a pro player is just actually just struggling to get Challenger, like straight up, at least an LCS player, I genuinely believe they're probably just pretty unlucky. But because I don't think it's hard to climb right now. Like seriously, like they're probably just getting really, really unlucky. Like I had an account when I actually first started the season, I played on a Riot account, and I was like 30 and 40, 30 wins, 40 losses. Like, that was the first time like I've ever gone negative win rate, and it's just like I was really, really unlucky. I failed my promos to master 5 times, 2 to 3. Like, I've never gotten that unlucky in all my life playing solo queue, and like I was just ending the season rank 1. Like, early season solo queue is kind of a coin flip. So like I genuinely believe if a pro player has a lot of games right now and they're not challenger, they're probably really unlucky. At least an LCS player. As long as
if they've played a certain amount and they can't make it, is it also possible they're just actually not good? Is that plausible?
Yeah, they're probably just not good at playing solo queue. Like that's the thing. Like PoE, for example. Let's look at PoE for example. He demoted from challenger to grandmaster last year at one point on FlyQuest, and while at the same time this guy is like having MVP performances every single LCS game. Like he was getting actually griefed and unlucky for a period of time, and then at some point, because of how tilted he was getting from those games, he began performing worse in solo queue too. That's a real thing. That is a real thing for pro players and a lot of players in solo queue. Like, regardless of how well they're playing in LCS, regardless of how good of a player they are, mental in solo queue is a real, a real thing. And luck, these things are real. So it's hard to say. Like, if the player can't reach challenger the whole season, like there's a problem. There's probably a problem. Like, I wouldn't say like their current ranking right now, as of now, is like, yeah, you're shit if you can't be this rank. Like that. I don't like saying that.
More extreme.
I have a question for you, actually, Dom. Oh, go on. Yeah, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say that you can ask me a question in a second. I was just gonna.
Was he just mailing it in when he played solo queue or something?
No, Bjergsen literally said last year that there was a point where he demoted all the way to Diamond 1 while he was one of the best performing players in LCS. He was Diamond 1.
I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that. So he talked about it.
What are fans doing that they didn't get that information to me when the guy was still playing? Don't you even care? Come on, I need my fucking ammunition.
He was pretty upfront about it. I mean, he just said that, like, I like was playing solo queue with the mindset of like I wanted to like play the matchups correctly. Where solo queue is more about just being adaptable. Like, one thing that I've learned by playing a lot of solo queue is that matchups almost never go the way that they really should, and the most important thing for any player in solo queue to be doing is just looking at the map at all times and just be assessing all the information that's coming at you and just getting as much information as possible. Like, that's more important than actually like having these built-in mentalities. Whereas like pro players, a lot of the time you play with the mentality. I did this too, where it's like, okay, I have like this match up top, which means that I'm gonna have like a pushing lane, so like I can like then like I'll start bottom, I'll path towards like that crab or whatever, because like these are my pushing lanes. Like be like we'll do dragon on these timings. You like you put things into like the LCS framework where that's not actually what solo queue is. Solo queue is a bunch of random players, and there's massive skill discrepancies. So you just need to be watching the map all the time. Like, that's kind of like how I view
the question I had for you, Dom, is this, because I'd actually never thought to ask you this. Since obviously Destiny's on his team now and is in the LCS, and last year obviously good old Rioma was on fucking 100 Thieves, surely you must eventually get like match with these guys in solo queue, right? Do you ever play with these guys in solo queue? Listen, do they either A, if they're on your team, talk shit to you, or do they B, like, if I were them, just because of who I am, I would just go hard. Like, I don't care what's going on in the game, I'd be like a fucking cat going after a laser pen. Like, I would just be so to fuck your game up and just go kill you at all times after all the shit you talk. Do they not do that? Do they actually just chill, guys?
No, I've never had like most pro players, like, they'll just be like, yeah, I mean, you said what you said. Like, honestly, like I don't think
fair enough.
I don't think a lot of my takes on pro players are like egregiously wrong, where somebody's playing like super well and I'm just shitting on them all the time.
But I know that the problem is pro players, understandably, listen, if someone's talking shit on you, even if it's true, you still feel bad. Yeah, I get why they get upset.
Yeah, I mean, I just try to keep it like, reasonable in most situations. Like, there's a couple times, like, the only person that's ever like really like fired back at me was like Ica, because I mean, I just like number one, I just still think this guy is just bad. Like, he's playing in LFL. He's he's like literally on the second worst team in LFL, and he's just underperforming. Hey, I know everyone's on Immortals. All I'm saying is like, it's not looking good for Ica in LFL. So this guy was playing in LCS, a tier 1 league. Well, we're in LFL is competitive. It's probably the best regional league this year. Sure. But like, he is not one of the best mid laners in LFL right now. So like, there was a couple times where like he would just like, be like, oh, like, this guy criticized me when he was bad. But like, to me, I would literally just flame him, being like, I'm literally like 6 years retired and I'm higher ranked than you with less games. Like, what are you doing with your fucking life where you're on? Because I think that the way it works, like, my mentality is like, the worse you're doing in LCS, the more like crazy effort you should be putting in solo.
You got to show something somewhere. Yeah, of course.
So
yeah,
like,
exactly.
I'm more okay with players like Power of Evil not playing super well in solo queue, or Bjergsen not playing super well, because they're bringing it like on stage, you know?
Course.
But like when a player's like literally underperforming, getting destroyed in LCS, and they go into solo queue and they're like 1K games, 50% win rate, low challenger. It's like, dude, like you got to like prove yourself somewhere. You got to like fucking show what you're made of at some point. And like, I just never saw it from him. So like, I hated playing with the guy too.
By the way, as a very quick aside, that entire thing about Ryoma and fucking Ica was one of the most whack like angles for people who attack you I've ever seen in my entire time in esports. Because think about it, right? They are mid lane import players. It's the most important player in the history of the game, and they're imports. So that means you can't, by the way, like a moron LCS fan go, but they're not the worst player in the league. They're supposed to be one of the best. They're supposed to be A, top 2 on their team. Well, otherwise you've probably f***ed up your lineup. And B, that spot could literally be like Chovy or Caps or someone like that's the problem. People do this whack thing where it's like, oh, but he's all right. It's like, that's not, in that scenario, right? That's the equivalent to being like the franchise player in an NFL team. You can't be like, well, he's not the worst player on the team. He's getting paid $10 million or whatever. Like, well, it'd be like 30 million now or something. You get the analogy though. Like, people's framing of that was so whack, dude. Like, I always say this, like, your imports should be monsters in LCS. That's the whole point of the system.
Yes, they should be monsters. And then the other thing, the other angle is like, that was before OCE players, like for the Ryoma angle, that was before OCE players were considered naturalized or like native.
It might have even made some sense. I mean, he's a dog player, but in a world where he's actually going to be half decent, this year it would make sense. Last year it made no sense, mate. Both those moves were so garbage, it was unreal.
Well, yeah, and I just, like, for me, it's like you see these players, and then what I thought about was the players that I thought would be deserving of the roles that just weren't there, you know?
So that was like the Ica one, listen, here's the thing. I'll give him credit on the Ryoma one. As you're seeing now with some of the players that have come from the OCN Green, some of them are good. I thought that fucking FBI was pretty decent every time I saw him play. Lost half these, they're LCS caliber. The problem is this, right? Ica, like you've said, mate, he was already a known quantity, and he came from fucking Europe. By the way, like, I could trip over and find 10 fucking ERL mid laners right now that are way better than Ica and a better prospect as well. I've never played, Man,
come on, I've been watching a little bit of LFL. Go watch, I don't know how to pronounce their names because I watch it muted, but Diplex, whatever his name is.
Okay.
Well, because it's in French, right? Like, there's no English broadcast for LFL. So watch Diplex or Dplex, whatever his name is. Watch him play compared to watch Ica play right now in the league, and then tell me that Dplex is a worse player, Diplex is a worse player than Ica, Like, I don't know, man. Like, to me, it didn't make sense. The other thing was, like, I guess I'm a little bit biased towards Insanity. He's somebody who's been, like, my friend for a while, but I actually think that he's pretty good. Like, I think Insanity is actually a good player, and he was the person under Ica. So I'm like, why does this guy deserve the spot over, like, Insanity, who at least has more upside than Ica? That's something we can definitely argue, is that Insanity had more upside.
Oh, agreed, yeah.
And then once you actually, like, put them in once you gave Insanity the opportunity, he performed better than Ica as well. So, like, for me, that whole situation was just like, so no one can ever be criticized based on their level of play anymore. Like, is that what we're doing? Because, like, these motherfuckers, like, if you go on fucking Reddit post-game threads, they have no problem criticizing all the pro players themselves. But apparently, like,
oh, of course,
if a person like
us, if me and you said something on this show they thought was wrong about the game or disagreed or we thought we had a bad take, they criticize us, mate. They don't have a brain problem up in their mouth then, do they?
Man. It is what it is.
It is true.
Yeah. Oh, Insanity's here?
Yeah,
Insanity. I was just saying how much better Ica was.
Actually, Insanity's literally outside. I mean, I'm at my office right now. At the Immortals office. It's literally right outside the door. Just wandering around. I see him.
I was just talking about how much of a downgrade Insanity was to Ica, but I mean, it is what it is. Like, it is what it is. You get what you can. I mean, sometimes you just can't afford the imports anymore, so you have to go with Insanity, native players. So, I mean,
by the way, I'll even just throw this in as well, because here's context people might forget. Ica is French. He's even shitting the bed in his own fucking backyard. Come on, homie. At this point in time, like, could me and Dom just get a team together and beat you? Like, show me something if you want to talk some shit.
He's not even on a team that you can make excuses for. Like, that team, LDLC, number one, they're historically one of the
champions. Yeah, they were champions last year.
One of the best teams in the French. Damn, I didn't know we were going to go into an Ica rant during the crackdown in 2021. But I mean, shit, we just go where it takes us. But
I'm
that
just
team,
awkwardly listening.
This is a clip. Keep going. This is a clip.
This has they have a stacked roster. They have Dan from Misfits, just came from a tier 1 league.
Yep.
And then they have Yellowstar, one of the best shot calling supports of all time in Europe as a support, and they still can't get wins. Like, this team is actually underperforming so ridiculously hard. How does it not lend credence to how bad these players or this player actually is? But whatever, man. It is what it is. You know, we'll see. Maybe they'll make a run in LFL. So yeah, maybe
Stakes
we'll
are mid,
visit
you know, like stakes are mid.
I'd also just love to know, by the way, if people don't know, because that's the team that Soaz coaches. Like, I'd love to know how the fuck Soaz is coaching. Like, give me a break. But Soaz played his career with like Specky, like all these like Monty Caps, like, and then he's just watching Ica like, you tried. You tried. Give me a break. Give me a fun. I know, what's he going to say? What is he going to say? He's like, listen, I mean, especially as it's so, that's the other thing, right? Even though it's just a mild flame, because I'm mates with him. Soaz is like not only French, he's like hardcore French. He's one of the biggest whiners of all time. I can't even imagine him being the
Come
coach.
on, man.
I can't even imagine.
There.
Because it's just real, he knows it. And he fucking admitted to you. He'd probably whine about it and go, yeah, it's fucking hard not to whine. Yeah, you whining now, you'd have to shut up. So anyway, you get the point. There's the point. I think.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ. All right, so one thing we haven't actually talked about that much is like the current like standings of LCS. You gotta watch out, man, when you come on the show. We might just start going off at random.
Whatever.
Which one of my teammates is gonna come up now? Like.
Oh, no, we've done our best to try and skip your teammates, mate. You know, that'll be on the other episodes where you're not here. We'll flip the fuck out in there, don't worry. But yeah. So.
Yeah, well, number one, like the thing is, like, I didn't think Destiny was super good in Origin, but like I much preferred having Destiny in the team than Jack Troll. So for me, like, I was defending Destiny more of last year than hating on him, because I was just like, why did they replace Jack Troll? They replace him, and then they just like lose every fucking game. They don't even make it to playoffs. But whatever, you know, it is what it is. Anyways. Let's talk a little bit about the LCS right now, because currently, I mean, your team is 4-5. There's a lot of teams that are within a couple games with you. I mean, this is what a lot of people don't understand. People will put like teams like I think 100 Thieves is 6-3 now. They'll put like these teams like 100 Thieves, like TSM, like on this pedestal and look like they're unescapable. We're even seeing Dignitas being put into this tier randomly, and then you're only actually 2 games behind these teams with 9 games left to play. Like, you guys aren't out of it by any means. Like, do you feel like some of these teams right now are getting overrated? I mean, we just saw 100 Thieves lose to Golden Guardians. They look like a completely different team when they're playing control mages. You have Dignitas getting rated super highly. I know that you guys lost a game to Dignitas, but like, do you feel like all these teams are like on another level, or do you think that like there's a lot of parity right now in the league?
I mean, I think the league is really strange right now. Like, I still think like C9, TSM, and TL are by far like just ahead of every team in terms of consistency and like just overall gameplay across like all members. I think those are the only 3 teams though that are like showing that right now. I think TSM only recently though came into that like league for me, but like TL and C9 were like still at the top for me. Like I think that everyone else is like really close in level of play and real like consistently. I don't know if I want to throw CLG and GGS in there, but I think that like shit, I mean, we lost to GGS. It was a really tragic game, but
the Ivern top, we saw it.
And we're just not going to talk about it.
But,
yeah,
we just won't talk about the Ivern top for this episode.
but like, Jesus Christ. I think that like every team can beat every other team right now. Like, GGS beat 100 Thieves, you know, like CLG is like nearly taking games off of like every team right now. So like, except us, but but they are like they're looking not that bad, and like I wouldn't be surprised if CLG also now subs in Pobelter. Like, I wouldn't even be surprised, right? Like, now they'll actually have like their full roster, and I just seriously wouldn't be surprised that every team can compete for like top 6 right now, and I just still think that TL and C9 and TSM are like.
Is Dignitas the imposter? Like, they're 6-3 right now. They're tied for 2nd in the league. Like, to me, when I see their gameplay, there's nothing really convincing about it. Maybe I'm off the mark, but when I see the way they play, it feels like they win a lot based off like being reactive, like enemy teams making really egregious errors. I mean, the EG and the TSM games come to mind immediately. It's like they threw over Raptors, they threw over like Baron, and sure, they're like clutching out some of those situations, but like when I try to evaluate a team, I kind of evaluate it through the lens of like, what is their mentality and what is their, like, what are they trying to do going into the game? And then how well are they able to like execute that and then translate that to a win? It's like the reason why I think TSM has been playing pretty well lately is because they come in with like a game plan. You can see the game plan on paper, and outside of that game versus Dignitas, they'd been able to like execute on it, where it feels like Dignitas kind of has like random games where I don't really give them that much credit for the win. Like, how do you evaluate that team?
Would say there's definitely, I don't want to say luck, but it's like, I don't think that they're representing like the top of the league in regards to the same way like TL, TSM, and C9 are, like I said, like, but I say that, but I also, you know, want to say that neither is every other team, right? Like, so like, I think that I'm happy for them and I'm glad they have a good record. Like, I think that's that momentum that they have, this momentum that they have right now, and this record is going to be like really useful for the second half of the round robins to secure top 6. So good for them. You know, you can't take the wins away from them. They still won. So like,
sure. I mean, I wish you could, but you can't.
I think come playoffs, if they do make playoffs, then we'll see how they can stack up against these teams in like BO5 or BO3 scenarios, right? And I think that it's a good thing that they're taking games away from, you know, these top, every team in the league. Like, I'm glad, because like, I'm glad that the league is so, I guess if you want to say like volatile or inconsistent, because like it just shows that NA is a lot more competitive this year, and there's no like overwhelming top team like C9 last year that was just completely like just dumping everyone in like 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes, like 3 minutes. Like it was like disgusting, right? And I think that that's really healthy for the league, for it to be this close, for competition, and like giving us like a more realistic chance internationally.
So like, if you take a team like Dignitas, this is the way I'll kind of like frame it. You take a team like Dignitas, first 9 games, they're 6-3. If you were to predict like the way the next 9 games go, do you think that they have a chance to match another 6-3? That means that they would have to, like, let's say they only lost to.
It's hard to miss playoffs, put it that way. I think they'd have to lose like 7 games or something with this playoffs. I think at this point.
Yeah, but like where do you put them coming into the back half? Like, do you think they're gonna keep on performing like a top team? Like, they're gonna beat most of the teams they play against? They'll at least have a winning record in the last half.
I mean, I would say probably not, and I say that because I think that they have just shown so many inconsistencies in their games, which is like, you know, a lot worse than some of the other teams that I've seen that have shown like when TL is showing inconsistencies, like I don't even think it's like as bad as when Dig has, or even when we have, right? So like, I think that like it's hard to say, but I still think that I would probably say negative, but I just think that if they can use the momentum properly and they like play with confidence, then they have a massive advantage. So it really is hard to say.
How would you give us, like, because again, if people haven't watched Academy, they won't know much about him. How would you explain Fake God, the top laner for Dig? Because one of the interesting things, I actually think it's why it's interesting you've just come in LCS now, mate, is top lane, in my opinion, is the most stacked role in LCS right now. Like some of the best players in theory in the West playing LCS right now in the top lane. Meanwhile, bizarrely, actually, one of the old and best role used to be mid lane. I think mid lane's pretty whack now. So what about your position? What about Fake God? What do you think of him?
I mean, I think Fake God's a pretty consistent player overall, especially on the stage games that he plays. I don't think that he's like necessarily this player that's like explosive and like carrying your games that much. I think that, but that's not necessarily always like the role of top lane, and I think he plays the style that he kind of needs to sometimes for the team. He doesn't always play it well, but he's a good role player for the team. I think that.
Here's something I can ask you. Do you think that you have the liberty to play the way he plays? Because he's pretty much like blinding like Gnar, Gragas, Aatrox, Renekton. You know, he's just playing like those 4 champions. And it feels like, you know, he's able to win a lot of games because he has like the explosive jungler. But it feels like if you did the same thing from my end, your team would be winning a lot less games. Like, do you feel like that's something that, you know, you have the liberty of doing on Immortals?
Well, I don't want to speak too much about like our strengths and weaknesses too much like on broadcast, because like, you know, that's like giving away a lot about our team. But I just will say that we're like a pretty adaptable team, and like we're still a really new team, so we're still figuring out our identity. And I think that Dig is a team that has definitely had more time together because they have no imports and they've been scrimming since like early December, whereas we've been scrimming since like, even before December.
Yeah.
We start scrimming in like January. So like, I, I mean, we're still figuring out our identity, and that's gonna come with like hiccups and bumps and trial and error, right? So I think that from my experience with the team so far, I'll confidently say that we're really adaptable overall. So I'm not like,
Okay.
that's all I'll say on that.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess the other team that I wanted to get your opinion of that I feel like there's a lot of controversy around right now is like 100 Thieves. Like, because, I mean, we hear them obviously talk about them being like a championship team. For me, I feel like they're like pretty inconsistent, and then especially like I think their champion pools are getting, kind of exposed. Do you feel like this team is like also in that top tier? Because everyone going into the league was considering them like top 3. I mean, TSM obviously looked really poorly and poor in lock-ins. First week, they looked really bad. Most people were saying the top 3 teams in the league were going to be C9, TL, 100 Thieves. Obviously, they've taken a step back this last week. I mean, they lost to Golden Guardians, but how strong do you think 100 Thieves really is? Like, do you think that they're top 3, or like, do you think that they, are getting exposed and they don't have as much upside as the other teams?
I think it's no surprise coming out the gate that 100 Thieves looked just ahead of a lot of teams.
4 players played together.
Yeah, 4 players that played together for years, so or a year at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they didn't come out the gate looking good together already, then there would be a huge problem. Mm-hmm. And I think it's good scouting, and it's good to see that this team of 4 players is coming in strong and has this like style and this token, of the team, this gameplay that is like really in sync. It's nice to see it, right? But I don't know if they'll break. Like I don't know if they'll continue to improve. It's hard to say. I just don't know. We're kind of seeing like a negative trend on that right now. So it's I think that they're definitely in my eyes not at the same level of like C9 and TL or TSM, in my opinion. Even so, they're like making games competitive against them. I still feel like their skill ceiling as a team isn't as high compared to what maybe the community may perceive. Not to say they're not good right now. I think that they are still a good team, and I would assume that they would probably make top 6 for playoffs, but I think it's hard to say whether or not they'll like compete for like first place, for example, and like represent an A. I don't really see it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're the type of team that doesn't have too much upside because of like the flexibility. Like even though a team like TL is under them in the standings, right? Like that when push comes to shove, Jensen, Alfari, like these guys will be able to play whatever is meta, and they'll play it well. Especially what we normally see the meta become around playoffs. I mean, there's always this like this pattern that happens within LCS and LEC, where as crunch time happens, suddenly it's like control mages every game, like more tanky top laners, front to back team fights. Like that's generally speaking the formula, and I feel like that's just something that 100 Thieves is kind of weak at. Like Demonte is good at what he does, but he's definitely better at like playing counters to meta champions than playing like necessarily like pure meta.
He has limitations, let's be real. But as you said, I think it was on the last episode, the good thing about him is he knows his limitations, so he plays to his strengths, which is good. But put it this way, there's no universe you can imagine. Oh, Demonte, champion of LCS, like it's just not gonna happen, is it?
It's really hard. It's really hard to imagine that, but I mean, that's
you have to hit the meta, like smack in the face, perfect team, nothing go wrong. Like he's a good player, but come on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're limited. I mean, the other teams we could talk about, I mean, they kind of remind me of EG in that sense, where it's like they look limited. Like Jizuke does not have the ability to like. Jizuke is good at being Jizuke. He's not good at randomly having to be, like Power of Evil or something. So that's like why I always value players, like Perks, and people like don't understand where his value comes from. He's somebody who can literally play everything. So like when the meta becomes mages, it's not like he's like, oh shit, he's not as good at mages. Like he's not role playing a mage player, like he'll play the Orianna, he'll play the Azir and stuff, and he's won championships like time and time again, like on those types of champions. So, I mean, the issue for me is kind of like more towards the bottom of the league, because you were saying that it was the most competitive it's ever been. but I feel like the bottom teams are like pretty weak. I mean, Golden Guardian and COG feel like they're like in a league of their own. Even FlyQuest seems like definitely worse than I expected. What makes you think that these teams are competitive? Like, because I mean, even Golden Guardians to beat 100 Thieves, like with how like they had what 5 Barons and fucking Soul and Elder, and it still took them so long to win the game. Like, it feels like this team is not going to pick up many more wins.
So from my perspective, from just scrimming every team and like just playing against these teams, like I guess I'm more optimistic in a sense because of how volatile I see the league being. So that gives me like this more optimistic view of every team in the league to like beat every other team.
So the best teams aren't that good, which means that bottom teams can rise up. Is that kind of how it goes?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
right.
exactly how I view the league right now. So, that's where like my optimism comes for these for every every team in the league. It's just
let me ask you. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, I'm done with my point.
Let me ask you this question then, right? One of the problems I've found watching shows where I try to see, what's everyone else's opinion in the community is most of the discussions around Fudge from Cloud9 are completely worthless because people didn't watch him in Academy. So all they're going off is mad shit like, oh, he's another person from OCE, or like, well, he's not licorice, or it's like, and everyone's doing this like weird framing that doesn't really give you like, any actual insight. So you obviously played in Academy. I'm sure you've scrimmed this guy before. You've now seen him in Cloud9 as well. Like, how would you describe this player's potential? What do you expect from him? Did you agree with them replacing licorice with him? What do you think?
Well, I think I may have commented on this before, but I said that like, well, Licorice was a really stable piece. Like, he's a veteran, and he's always been a consistent laner. He's always had this like kind of like a rock kind of like impact in a way for the team. So it's no surprise that when removing him and putting in this player who's a rookie, nerves through the roof. You're playing with Perks and Blabber and Vulcan and Sven. Like, no surprise he's gonna come in nervous. He's gonna come in having bad games. It's
he should be
happen.
the worst player. Like, let's be real.
He should. I mean,
yeah,
he should. He should. Like, it's not expected that he should be like by far the best top laner in the league. And I think that the media and like what happened in the offseason, and partially his fault too, is he put himself on this pedestal to be like either glorified or flamed. Like, he put himself there. It wasn't anyone but him. He put himself there. For the most part. So like, and he admitted to it. He owned up to it. So like, I think that the ruthless flame of the community on Fudge is like really ridiculous because I don't think he's underperforming that much in all of his games. And I don't think he's a bad player either. I think he's young. He's like 18, and he's like still competing just fine against every top laner in the league so far. He's like still, holding his own in lane. He's playing like, I mean, lately he's been playing like Gragas every game, but like, I think that's not even like his comfort play style. So like,
he was like a Gangplank player in Academy, right? Like Gangplank.
Yeah, I mean, he plays carries, and I think that the fact that he's pulling out tanks like this and he's looking all right, and at a caliber or in a team with such a high like
expected level of play or whatever.
Expected level of play, yeah. I think that shows good potential for him, and I think that we'll probably see a lot more highs from him. So I mean, I just don't get the ruthless flame of the community. It is actually completely ridiculous, but slightly understandable, I guess, because of what he did in the offseason to put himself on that pedestal.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah, my question would be like, how good did you actually think this guy was in Academy? Because like, I didn't watch enough Academy to really.
Was he actually stomping? Was he some like monster?
Look, every time you bring up Fudge, what every single Reddit thread will say, what every single Twitter comment will be like, is this guy was the best top laner by far in Academy? Was it actually like that, or was it C9 kind of just the best team in Academy because they were winning?
I think it was more so like C9 being kind of the best team. I mean, at least in my games against him, like, I think we went 1-1 against C9 Academy last year. One of the games I even solo killed him in lane. I was playing like Wukong versus Ornn or something.
Yep.
Like, not to say that makes him bad or anything, but I'm just saying like, he wasn't like perfect. It wasn't to the point where I'm like, I can't lane against this guy. Like, oh my God, like, this is insane. And people considered me the worst in Academy or whatever, right? So like, I just think that he was okay in Academy, and he was doing good with his team, and in the games they were winning, he looked really good. And of course, when C9 Academy comes on and they're winning all of their games in Academy, yeah, the top laner is going to look like a standout player. but at least from scrims and, you know, laning against him consistently, I would say he was definitely one of the harder opponents, like throughout from the whole league. So
Mhm.
I think that it's understandable that he was getting a lot of praise. Like,
was there anyone that you played against in Academy where you're like, oh, this guy's fucking good? Like, you know, during
I mean, he
summer
played
split,
Someday way back in the day, didn't he? Oh, I'm talking about recently. Right,
yeah, I'm talking
enough.
about recently.
Recently?
We saw a bunch of people move up, right? Like we had Fake God move up.
yeah, I would actually say Fudge, Fake God, and
Darshan maybe, or was he over?
What about the Niles guy?
Well, he was an Academy. He was collegiate.
Oh, sorry, that was the one you said earlier. Yeah, my bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Fudge and Fake God were the only two top laners that I was like, okay, if they went to LCS next year, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Like they are laning, at least in scrims, you know, for most of the time we scrim pretty consistently. They're not, and they're playing well in their stage games. Like, they're young, they have a lot to show. Why would they not make LCS? That's how I viewed those two. So I didn't consider them like so good that they're probably better than like most LCS top laners or anything like that. But I definitely knew that like if they made LCS, I would get it. Darshan, I was I mean, I thought he was playing pretty decent in most of his games in Academy, but I just still feel he wasn't like at the same level to me as Fake God and Fudge in terms of like the potential I saw from laning against them and playing against them. I still felt like Darshan was kind of like the same player, you know what I like, kind of like this. Like, you know, I played against him, or I've just seen him playing for so long. I just feel like he wasn't peaking further than Fudge and Fake God were, so that's why I just didn't know if he would make LCS or not. Who else was there? There was like Dokla as well, and Dokla was like okay. He wasn't as good as Fake God and Fudge either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think I do think from playing against Fake God and Fudge, I did say to myself like, yeah, these guys are good. Like, this is good practice. They can make LCS 100%. I knew that, and I said that many times.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have to remember Fake God didn't look bad when he came in season 9 to replace Someday. Like, he wasn't the reason why the roster was failing by any means. Like, he looked pretty good, and he was super raw back then. So like, you know, I think that the player has potential. I just don't know, like, when you start entering this top echelon of the league, it's the people that you're playing against becomes the issue. It's like, okay, Fake God could be like serviceable, but you have Alfari like in there. I mean, I don't know. Like, you have Someday in there. Yeah. I guess.
I mean, there's a gap. There's a gap. And Huni. Oh well, when Huni was in Academy, he was also really good too. Do
you think he's overly hated on?
Of course. I mean.
You think he's actually good?
Okay, I will say he was definitely underperforming the first couple of weeks of LCS. I didn't know what was going on. Like, this guy looked like a monster in scrims, and then suddenly he was playing Gnar and inting every game on stage.
And I was every game. He just didn't know Stridebreaker existed. You know,
completely mind blown by it, to be honest, because I think he was like one of the players, at least from scrims, I expected like, oof, you know, Huni's actually going to go in and like shake a lot of people's expectations. Yeah, and then he was inting, and I was like, okay, well, this is awkward. But now I think he's been playing really well, so I'm happy for him. And I think that he's like adapted his playstyle to fit TSM more, and it's like, you know, pretty impressive, knowing that he like has multiple styles he can pull out, and I think that he's like a pretty good piece for their team right now. Pretty stable as well. Yep. I think he played like Shen against us.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
I think Thorin wanted to jump in there for a second.
I was going to talk about something else. Basically, all I was going to say was, like, I think one angle that people go too hard on the Fudge thing is they do something that fans do. I know pro players here, but I actually think it's legitimate, which is if I'm a real fan of a team, I know for esports it's a bit different because the lineups change, but like, just imagine it's sports. If you're like a diehard, like Pittsburgh Steelers team or whatever, right? If you're a fan, rather, if you keep going on and on about a player you think isn't good enough, one of the reasons you do it is you actually hope it becomes like a movement, and then the team notices and goes, yeah, you've got a point here, maybe he isn't good enough, and then they improve the team, right? Sometimes, even though it looks like you're hating, you're actually trying to improve the team. I mean, obviously, I actually genuinely do hope TSM really fails, but like, there's actually teams sometimes, the Iker example would be an example. Mate, I think I'm actually doing fucking Immortals a favour if I get them to fire Iker, because like we discussed before, I don't think he's good enough. So in that scenario, I'm actually actually like a fucking better GM essentially than their GM. I'm just trying to show him my notes.
So you're doing God's work.
Yeah, but the problem I have is this. When fans are doing it for Cloud9, I get it, because you think to yourself, dude, we've got Perks now, and we've got Mithy as a coach, Sven's still there, Blabber's in his second. Fuck, this is it. Guys, this is the team. Oh, fuck, we've got this guy in top lane who's never played LCS. Oh, he's having a couple of bad weeks. So what you think is, right, oh, we've got to make sure Cloud9 knows it. This guy isn't good enough. Like, we're never going to win Worlds if he's in the team, right? Of all the teams, I don't think a team with Perks, Sven, and Mithy is the one you need to worry about, that they're just going to go, oh, is he shit? I didn't notice. I was just planning on playing with him for 3 years. Yeah, my bad, guys.
Exactly.
Like, Perks didn't come to NA to come fucking like fourth twice and then go, oh, well, maybe next year, hey, Fudge, you and me, hey, mate, let's go on LS's streak. No, he came to fucking win. I wouldn't be surprised if they have problems. If they have a fucking guy who comes in as a sub, or they make some... There's the other thing as well. Sunken cost fallacy. If I've put as much money in as as Jack has, mate, I'd sign some mega like fucking player as the top laner after one split if it goes wrong. Just go and do a massive deal. Find one of the teams that's at the bottom of the leagues, haven't struggled, but got a good player, sign them over. Like, they're not going to let that team just collapse on itself, guys. You don't have to overreact like this is one of those mid-table teams that, like, oh, they think the player's way better. No, like, they'll figure it out if he isn't good enough.
Yeah.
Still flame him if you want to, of course, but like I'm saying, don't think you don't really need to like tell Perks if he's good or not. Like, he's gonna know.
Yeah, I mean, those players, look, I know Perks has over the years, like, he's improved on the way he deals with people, etc. Like, even if that's all true, he's not shy to like be able to point out where the team needs to improve. So it's not like Fudge is just going to be on an island where like there's going to be like one of those team environments where everyone thinks the player is shit, but no one's willing to confront it. So they're like, oh yeah, you're doing great up there. Like, they're going to give him the opportunity to improve. And if he doesn't improve, then it's going to be on him. And he just either wasn't capable enough, or, you know, he just didn't, he's just not cut out for it yet. He's too young of a player. Like, I don't think that he won't get a fair shot. You know, like, he's going to be able to be the best version of himself in that team.
Yeah, I highly doubt that C9, I mean, just with their staff alone and just, you know, the history of the team, I doubt that they'll be unaware of a problem if there is one.
Yeah, Max Waldo's gonna be in there playing, you know, who knows? He's gonna be fucking top lane Malphite and LCS and shit. Like, they'll make it work, dude.
Oh god. Okay, I mean, I just think like if things start hitting, you know, starts hitting the fan on C9, like you said, like, these players have the experience, like the management has experience to deal with it, and that's why I think as well fans are just completely overreacting when it comes to C9. I mean, shit, they're still, at the end of the day, they're still first place. Like,
dude, they almost won the lock-in and they're first place in LCS now. Like, what were they supposed to do? Win every game?
Yeah, you want them to do last year's C9 and just never
yeah. I mean,
every game in 50 minutes. That'd be nice, but like that was kind of rare. Like that. And to be honest, I think the rest of the league was really bad.
That's exactly what the players even say. They're like, yeah, we weren't even that good. Like, you saw that we weren't even that good.
Yes.
It's mainly that everyone else was so fucking shit that we looked good. So like,
Spring Split last year was like a nightmare in terms of like the level of play.
The teams that were supposed to be good just were terrible, right? Like the two teams that should have the top three going in should have been TL, TSM, C9.
Yes.
TSM fell off a fucking cliff. Like, they looked like a shell of them former selves. There was like this whole issue with Dardoch not really synergizing with the team. Then nobody wanted Dardoch, and, you know, we don't really talk about that anymore. But TL specifically, like, they were supposed to be, like, they were the team that had been winning the league, right? They replaced one player, which was like Xmithy for Broxa. I mean, that was like a side grade at worst in people's minds. There was no indication that team with Doublelift, Core JJ, Jensen, Impact, and Broxa would be a 9th place team. Like, that is ridiculous to even like come to that conclusion.
Oh my god, they were 9th in Spring. Oh my god,
yeah,
I forgot
think about that. Impact, Jensen, Core JJ, Doublelift, and Broxa. That was a 9th place team.
It's playoffs.
Yeah.
No, it's not so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They lost the final game. They had that final game for C9 where they almost got it back together. And yeah, it was, I mean, it just
no, dude, what you were saying there, where you were building up the context of that spring split, what says it all is this. So obviously in both splits, FlyQuest came second, right? And even in the other split, they were like way above level, like in the playoffs, still really good. Dude, when we had players on this show, they even told us some mad shit like, yeah, we just stopped screaming C9 because we should never win. So it's like, what? dude, like what? That's just like giving up. What is this? Like,
it was too harming to their own confidence. So,
exactly,
like, I kind of make sense, right? Like, let's say you're a team where you're like trying to, like, you're a team that was supposed to be like, look at FlyQuest, right? They were supposed to be going into, most people had them around like what, 7th to 10th place,
just a playoff team or something. Yeah, exactly.
Or even worse. Yeah, maybe a playoff team. 6th, 7th would be like the max that people would really give them. And then that team, because you got to remember, like, teams like 100 Thieves, people thought were actually going to be pretty good. So a team that had such like a low ceiling to start in their mind is now like in playoffs. Like, at some point you just have to like be like, okay, we just need to perform the best we possibly can, and what's realistic for us to actually like get to our best level. Is it getting blown out in ways that destroy our confidence, and then we start losing to teams like that we can potentially beat, or do we need to be like trying to like work up to that level of C9 and like scrim some teams that are like a little bit under them and like get there?
I mean, no one liked scrimming C9 last year. It was, I mean, they were ending scrims at like 3 p.m. and they'd be like 3-hour scrims from 12 to 3.
Yeah, that's
and the
5
reason I
games.
know is because like they'd be and they'd be in SoloQ so early, and I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like they already ended scrims. Like, what? You know, like most teams are playing like their 5th game by like 4:30 or something, right? So it's like that's why I think most teams probably didn't want to scrim them, because like it was just so miserable to lose that way. And I still think you could learn some. Maybe you could learn some stuff, but you couldn't practice because you were getting destroyed so hard.
Yeah,
and that's kind of that. I mean,
I also heard like Blabber was like an exceptional scrim freak. Like what we saw on stage when he was getting MVP was like a fraction of what he was doing in scrims. Like people would literally tell me, like, because I would talk to Jens and he'd be like, yeah, I mean, he just goes like literally like 11-0 every game. Every champion, every game, he's just 11-0. Like they get Dragon at 5 minutes every game, Rift Herald at 8 minutes every game, and then they just snowball through like Dragon after that. Like it was just so miserable that teams just didn't even feel like they were improving. So yeah, I mean, it was
Sven Vulcan were also like they just, at least in spring, they had an understanding of the bot matchups. Like all of them, there was like at least I think there was like 3 or 4 really popular meta bot matchups. It was like the Phelios ones, the Ezreal ones, Senna. And then I think there was like MF as well or something. Maybe not MF, but there was just like 4 bot lanes that were being played that they were just so like, you couldn't draft against them. That was like the biggest problem. Like they no matter what bot lane they got, they won. And that at the time, I think bot meta was like super important too. Like the swap to Rift Herald just became a thing, and like, I mean, no one knew what to do when the enemy bot lane was swapped at 7 minutes top and took Rift, and like. At the time, the concept of like trading sides and stuff was still really weak in NA, and just overall, I think like it's just weak in most regions too. So it was like they were just ahead of the curve, and that's why they looked so dominant. But that's why I'm saying now it's like a really good thing that most teams are really close, because it means like we're like taking games off each other, because it means like, yeah, we know how to play the game well enough to beat you guys at least, right? And that's a positive thing for the league.
Yeah.
As much as fans hate to see. You know, I mean, C9 being 7-2 instead of 9-0, but it's still a positive.
But I mean, I think that brings it back to Thorn's original point, which makes a lot of sense, which is this team was considered an underperformance for C9. They're like, oh man, look, Fudge looks like shit. Perks doesn't look like he's playing well, and they went 2-3 in the finals. They got second. And then they started 7-2. That's like when the team looks bad. Like to me, that's a good thing. If I'm a C9 fan, I think that's an amazing
thing. If that's us at our worst, when the fuck are we going to be in 3 months? That's what I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. It should be looked at through the lens of like, yeah, okay, so our floor is this high. Imagine what our ceiling is. And they showed like things that you should be happy about. Like even though they looked like the worst team in TL in the finals of Lock-In, they showed that they were actually able to battle back from like a 0-2, and actually like they showed mental resilience, like, and those are types of things that you actually really care about if you're looking for a team that's going to be a championship. But I know Revenge actually has to go here soon. He has a meeting.
And meetings and scrims soon. Yep.
Yeah, but it was a good one, man. It was a banger, full 2-hour episode. We went into everything. We went from the beginning stories, man. We went from life all the way into where you are in LCS right now. So yeah, good luck on the weekend, man. Thank you for
thank you.
Thank you for being here, man. It was a great talk. We'll definitely have you on again sometime if you're down. But yeah, thanks for being here. It was a great talk, man. See you later.
All right. Have a good one, guys. Peace. Thanks for having me.